tonight's talk will be brief because I don't have that much left. And talk about the Black Sash test at Seafood Brown School in Michigan. And Seafood Brown is not a typical martial arts teacher like in modern times. He is more old school and like traditional in a lot of ways. And one of the ways is it is hard to get a black sash. And most schools these days, it takes 2 to 4, maybe 6 years to get a black belt. And a black sash in a Chinese martial art usually takes a little bit longer, but the way that martial arts in this country has been watered down is atrocious. And Seafood Brown, it has no qualms about telling people that. People who teach those watered down martial arts to their faces. I'm not there yet, but that's kind of like what you're talking about, Kaya, at the end of class, like being confrontational. Like sometimes it just takes, takes something to say what needs to be said to somebody in order to make the difference. And Seafood Brown is single-handedly changing a lot of the way that martial arts is taught. One of the ways is there are some people now who are pretty close to him that have decided, like, yeah, I'm not giving away rank anymore. And there is nothing easy about this. It's a very difficult thing to do as a martial arts teacher, and as a person who owns the school, because I'll tell you, a lot of people stay in martial arts because they're getting the next rank. And they're pretty much just in it like to get the black belt after a couple of years so that they can just say, well, I did that. That will not happen here. And I'm not saying that you won't get a black sash. You might. You have to stay around for a long time. You have to put a lot into it. But like in a lot of schools, that's it. That's the reason why people practice. And they might start for some other reason, or at least they tell themselves for some other reason, but it ends up being about like, well, now I got so much time in, I might as well just stick around for one more year because then I'll get my black belt. That is so wrong, so wrong. First of all, the sash or the belt, it is meaningless by itself. And if you think about it, you can go online and you can buy a black sash for $5. And you can put it on. And there are some people that actually do this. They haven't actually been given the rank of black sash or black belt, and they just buy one and put it on, and they say, well, I practiced here for a few years and here for a few years. I practiced enough time, I'm just giving myself a black belt. That's awful. But sometimes those people get what they deserve. If you look online for people who walk into jiu-jitsu schools, Brazilian jiu-jitsu schools, and say that they're black belts, they get things broken. We don't do that. We're nice. But the fabric itself is meaningless. The whole reason behind it is what it takes to earn the black sash and what you put into every class and the person that you become. And some people wonder, like, why doesn't Sifu Scott wear his sash in class? And it's the same reason why Seafood Brown doesn't wear his sash in class when he teaches, except for the difference is Seafood Brown wore his so much that it just got torn to shreds. And he went to tie it on one day and it just broke, just ripped in half. And I just don't want that to happen to my sash, because my sash is very important to me. It's probably the most impressive thing that I've done in my life, along with opening this school and teaching you guys. For those of you who haven't heard yet, there are now 12,000 students that Seafood Brown has had between the two schools in Michigan. Most of them, over 10,000, were from the first school. And out of all those people, there are 8 black sashes. I was the third one, And he had this school for about 25 years, I want to say, before he ever had his first black sash. That's not the way that it goes in most places, because most places they shut down when people think that they're not going to get a black belt. But the way that we are, it's like you get so much out of your practice and you see the value and you see what's happening in your life that you think like, oh, the black belt, that's like a dream. That's like something that could happen maybe, but I'm not focused on it. And that's the right attitude to have. If you're focused on getting a black sash and that is like your goal in practice, you're going to be disappointed, I promise you, because it won't happen the way that you want it to. It's going to be far more painful than you think. But the black sash is, I don't usually keep it in the dojo. I keep it at home because I'm very worried about something happening to it. But the black sash that we get with Sifu Brown is like it's a very nice sash. It's much nicer than the sashes that you guys get. And I'm sure you won't be able to see this on the camera, but it is embroidered with my name, the date that I passed the test, and Sifu Brown's logo. And I've worn it probably a total of 20 times maybe since I got it. You can imagine if I wore it every time I practiced or every time I taught, this thing would be in shreds probably already, or headed that way. And I don't believe that a black sash or any sash should stay like totally pristine and in mint condition. I think that you need to like roll around and get it kind of dirty and mucked up. And by the time that happens to this sash, I will have been practicing for like 50 years. So it'll really mean something. If you see a karate teacher or a jiu-jitsu teacher with a black belt, a lot of times it'll be, the belt does something really cool, because if you practice long enough, the outer layer of the belt actually starts to fall away and the belt turns white. And it's very cool symbolism there of like, you know, returning to a beginner's mind with your practice. But it's just amazing to see, you know, the work and the effort that goes into that and just destroy part of the uniform. So I want to talk specifically about this black sash test, and I'm not going to tell you a lot of details because I don't think that Sifu Brown would like that, and if I gave you too many details, you'd probably quit right now. But I'll tell you a little bit. When you get to second degree red sash, which takes a long time to get to it, then there's a conversation that happens between you and Sifu. And here it would be you guys and me. And the conversation goes something like, you gonna be here for a long time? And like, I already know the answer is yes at that point. You gonna keep practicing for the rest of your life? It doesn't have to be here, but martial arts. Okay, well, let's start down the path to black sash. And it's a very different process that goes on for the next chunk of time between the second degree red sash and the black sash. There are lots of different facets to the test, but one of the ideas is you decide certain things that you want to improve about yourself, about your life, and about your practice. And these are things that we work on. So one of the things that I chose that I wanted to do was the amount of meditation that I would do leading up to the test. And I just had this, I was increasing it every couple of months, every year. And another thing that I did was I said, I want to be a better grandson. And I started calling my grandparents. This is a weird thing. Like, who does that as part of a martial arts practice? Call your grandma. But I did. And she loved it. My grandma was like, it seriously brought my grandma back to life. And when I say that, it sounds like she was physically dying, but like, you know, I mean, she appreciated it so much. And this is like part of what the opportunity in our practice is. It's not really about what's just going on with us. You know, your practice is something that affects everybody around you. It affects everybody in the dojo, and it affects people in your life, and it should. If nobody is asking you, like, what are you doing differently? How come you're so happy all the time? Or how come you're so much calmer? Or how come you're taking charge now, or whatever it is? Nobody's asking you those questions, then you're doing something wrong. You got to start like letting it out. And so that's like the first part of the test. And without giving away too much, basically it gets to the point where here's the week of the actual physical test. And I do mean week. It's a week-long test. It's not like the other tests which take place over one day or a couple of hours. But the first day is forms, and it's like all that is done is forms. And some of you have a couple of forms. By the time you test for black, you have a lot of forms, and you have to do all of them many, many times for hours without stopping. And when I tested, I think I was a little bit lucky because there were actually 3 of us testing. And when Mr. Jacobson tested, in fact, as all of the other people subsequently after my test have tested by themselves, there's nowhere to hide. Sifu Brown can see exactly what you're doing every single moment, and there's no like slacking at all, like there was slacking on my test. But I'll tell you this, it makes the whole thing a little bit more nerve-wracking because you can feel Sifu's eyes on you the whole time, and that can bring out greatness, and it can also bring out like just your absolute worst crap, and then you have to like get over that and bring it back to greatness. So first night, all forms. Second night is all chin-ah, chokes, and throws, and I walked in a few minutes after Mr. Jacobson had started throwing, and I was like, who is that? Because he looked so substantially improved and just more skilled. Technique so clean and so fast compared to what I saw just a few years earlier. Like, you know, if this had been Dan walking in the room, I wouldn't have recognized him. I would have been like, who's that? Is that Sifu Brown throwing chin-ah over there? And it is one of the things that you should notice when you start taking the more advanced tests, and I was talking, I think, with you, Robin, about this before, is like the preparation is the fun part. You have this chunk of time before the test to decide, like, okay, this is what I'm going to work on, and this is what I really want to improve on with your physical technique. And we have a tendency to wait until the test, but you can actually do this anytime you want to. You don't have to wait until there's a test coming. You can just decide, I want to get better chin-on, so I'm going to work on it for a month. And that's the thing that I focus on. So that was a rough night, not only for Mr. Jacobson, but for all of us, because he was throwing like everybody in the dojo over and over and over and over, and we're falling for 3-4 hours, and that was tough. And the next night was sparring. And at this point, Mr. Jacobson is dead. I mean, we're like picking him up after every single round off the mats, because you know, the human body can only handle so much. And at this point, it's all mind over matter. It's like, I decided I was going to do this. I'm just going to do it no matter what happens. And you, like, literally, you guys have heard it, get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. This is get knocked down 70, 100 times, get up one more time. And Mr. Jacobson, one of the more amazing things about him is that his knees don't work so well. He has had knee problems for decades, ever since he was a kid, and they just got like a little bit worse through like everything in life. And as you guys know, most of you who are over 30, like stuff just hurts. That's just what happens. And so when you watch him spar, his distancing and his timing is amazing, and he does it with like 0 working legs. He's like just kind of teetering here, and the punch comes and he's just like, whoop, punch missed like this, and then like pop. And then every once in a while he'll pull out like a roundhouse kick to the head or a crescent kick. And he calls it the people's crescent kick. It's like, it hurts, but I got to do it because the people love it. and and it's amazing when you see somebody who's practiced martial arts for so many years, like the way that they can move when they're doing their art versus the way that they move when they're not doing their art. And martial arts should keep you fairly healthy, and at a certain age, stuff just doesn't cooperate the way that it used to. But when you get into that zone, or into that state of flow, basically, it's like all of your injuries and all of the pain and aches just kind of melt away and cease to exist for you. In that moment, you're just moving, and it's like you're like lightning. So to watch him spar was one of the more inspirational things, because he literally would hit the ground and like couldn't get up under his own power. People would have to lift him up. And then that night ended. He sparred with like 50 people in one night. And then the next night was probably actually one of the more difficult parts of the test, because there was a meditation class, and there were several of us black Sashes and some teachers who were guests of Sifu Brown's at the school. And Sifu did not tell Mr. Jacobson this until that night, but he was basically like bombarded without any prior knowledge by questions. And so he was there in front of hundreds of people, and he'd get a question that he never got any preparation time for, and it was some of the questions were really tough. I asked him one of the harder questions. My question to him was, what do you think, and this is something that you guys can ponder for yourself, what do you think is actually possible for an individual and for the world as a whole if people practice real martial arts? Like, what do you think things would actually be like? And I don't just mean like, what if everybody came in here and practiced? Because some people come in here and practice and don't like do it the way that it's supposed to be done. But I mean, knowing the way that it's supposed to be done and really practicing, what do you think is possible? And he gave a wonderful answer, and it basically came down to like world peace, and everybody's happy and like very powerful in their life, and like everything works. But I want you to think for yourself, even in your own life, like what would be possible if you actually practiced martial arts the way that you know that it's supposed to be done for a long time? What could your life look like? So that was very fun. And then Friday was probably the most fun, because Sifu Brown had these other teachers. There's Sensei Perez is a high-ranking ninjutsu teacher and practitioner, and Sifu Alice is the highest-ranking Bakwa teacher and practitioner in the world. And they were going back and forth teaching techniques, and it was really interesting because there were techniques that we had never seen before, but we had seen something like it. The principles all kind of match, and it's amazing, when you've practiced for long enough, you get the principles into your body, and it becomes actually pretty, I'm not going to say easy, but it becomes much less overwhelming to learn new techniques and get the variations of them. And it was one of the most fun nights I've ever had. We went for 3 hours, and we all practiced with the senior students in class. And I know for Sifu Brown, that is one of the most fun things about practice for him and teaching for him is getting to share his students and share the practice and teaching with his friends, and his friends are just happen to be like the best martial artists in the entire world. So, and then Saturday was a demonstration. Like 300 people came, and we did all kinds of crazy stuff. Broke wood on Mr. Jacobson as he was doing a form. Sifu Brown threw me in with the kids, and we did flying kicks, and there was like weapons demonstrations and sparring, and it was just awesome. And then Saturday night is the Camisa, and the Camisa is the actual ceremony where Mr. Jacobson got his black sash, and it's the same as the one that I got my black sash in. And I won't tell you guys details about it, but I'll tell you that Mr. Jacobson started practicing with Seafood Brown 22 years ago. And there was some time when he went away for college and work and then came back. But 22 years is a long time to wait. It's a long time to practice. And the whole week leading up to Saturday, and then Saturday itself, this amazing event is actually fitting to the 22 years of practice and effort and waiting. And most martial arts schools and teachers, they don't put that much effort into something to make it actually like fitting and to provide the kind of experience where it's like, that thing we just did was real. Like, that was maybe the most real thing that I've ever done in my life. That's the experience that you have being in a black sash test. And it totally brought me back to this place of just being completely inspired and humbled by what we do. Humbled by my own practice and people that I've practiced with, and also humbled by you guys giving me the opportunity to teach you what that means. And it's something that it's a relationship. It's an incredibly important relationship. And what I feel for you guys as my students is the closest thing that I have to children. And I might have actual children someday, but for now it's like, this is it. Like, when I see you guys throw a front kick, I'm like, yeah, that's like my front kick kind of, and then I yell at you to make it better. And when I see you guys, stand up and read your papers at the end of a test, or I see you get knocked down and get back up, it's like a piece of me is doing that. And it is the greatest honor in my life to be a part of all this with you guys. So don't think of this as anything other than it is. The black sash is a piece of fabric. And you could go online and buy one for $5 and wait for a week for it to get shipped to you, and you could put it on around your waist and it means nothing. But think of it as a symbol for what you put into your practice. And when you test and you get a new sash and you put it on and you look at yourself in the mirror, it should actually feel a little bit different. Now, the sash does not make you better at all. I wish that it did, but it doesn't. What the sash does is remind you of who you really are and what you're really doing here. And when you put on a yellow sash, you put on a green sash, and someday when you put on a red sash, or maybe someday a black sash, I mean, that is like, this is thousands of years of martial arts practice, dedication, effort, people dying for the art passed down into you. And when I say that, it's not to like scare you. It probably should a little bit. But when I say that, it's to just get you to understand, like, you got millions of people behind you holding you up through your practice, millions of people who have come before you. And just in Seafood Brown's school, 10,000 people. And the greatest thing that a teacher can hope for is that the students use us as a stepping stone. And so as great as we become, and as great as the senior students become, you want to become a stepping stone for the person who comes after you to become even greater. So that's your responsibility. Become greater than me. We'll start with meditation. Sit comfortably.